Hi, Mr. Shazam.
So we're back.
Alright, hi guys.
Welcome back to our channel.
So, my name is Moorea Everts. If you guys didn't know that.
I'm right.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Maria. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. So, in my little video right here, we're gonna talk about how Malcolm X is changing racism, like how the change of his character results in his change in view of racism and perspective. So just like a bit of background is like throughout the book, it changes and influences his character greatly. And the time this book takes place is obviously, you guys know, like racism is very heightened. And so the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, was an extremist group that had great influence on racism, and it was influencing a lot of life for both black and white people. And it was responsible for Malcolm's father's death, as well as partly responsible for his mother's insanity as it related on. And this led Malcolm to go into foster care, which helped lead him farther on his path. So the teachings that he learned from the prison, when he went to prison later on, was of the Nation of Islam. And so this leads to my first question. So the teachings of the Nation of Islam he received in prison affect a further change in both Malcolm's character and his view of white people. So my question is, how does his perspective of white people change in the prison, and how does his character change with this perspective?
I think in the prison, that's when he starts reading more, writing, and goes to Nation of Islam stuff, and he has more of a stand on what he believes with racism and stuff, whereas before he would just accept things he knew racism was going on, and but he just didn't necessarily do much about it, and then he just spiraled into his whole thing with being a hustler and whatever, just kept letting that wash over him, whereas it changed before.
Yeah, I think it was more white people, when he was more of a hustler and that sort of thing, it was white people have the power, not necessarily they're bad because of that, but more just they have the power. And then after prison, after he finds the Nation of Islam, it's white people are the ultimate suppressors, they're the devil, they're so badness, it's less bad before prison and more power, and then it sort of switches. It's still kind of power, but
Yeah, it's definitely interesting how before coming into prison, he was you guys were talking about, just he just didn't really acknowledge he didn't stand up for the racism that he was encountering, and he kind of just took it to be how it's gonna be because of the times he was in. But after he gets through Islam, after he is introduced to Islam, he definitely changes his perspective on all of that and starts kind of standing up more for what he believes in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. So my next question is a little similar, except it's talking about his Hajj to Mecca. So how does Malcolm's view of racism change on his pilgrimage to Mecca? And that...
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. I think obviously his view of racism, opposite racism, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
His view on white people sort of is Nation of Islam, white men is the devil, white men is bad, white men are suppressors, they hold us down. And then when he goes, he sort of has that,
mindset.
Yeah, that mindset. Also, it's not the same as Garveyism or whatever, but it's we can't coexist. It just can't happen. One of us is gonna have to win. It's a struggle till we win. And I think, after he goes to Mecca and he sees all these people of different colors interacting with each other, it's more of this is possible. It's possible to live in harmony. It's possible to do that and live together, coexist, that license sticker or whatever.
Yeah.
So basically, the license sticker came from Malcolm X.
Basically, from his trip to Mecca.
Yeah. No, but I definitely think that like being exposed to that kind of like culture, which you hadn't experienced before, like for people of all races kind of coexisting and being unified towards a common goal it's really the first time that he saw something like that, and I think it kind of gave him hope that he hadn't experienced up until that point.
It was definitely like eye-opening for him. I think he has a conversation with one of the like people he's with, and how like I think the guy tells him like this is like normal, like race isn't something you like pay attention to in other countries, but it's only in America that like that happens. And so like it should be normal ever for some reason. Like,
I don't think that's true though.
America.
But like I think it is an issue here. But
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
I just saw this news story about how sorry, this is related, I swear, and I'll make it really fast. It's like people in never mind, I can't remember the place. But it's like people are like bleaching their skin and it's really bad, and the mercury content is super high. Next.
That's like reverse blackface.
Yeah.
oh,
That's
weird.
awful. Okay, well, anyway.
it was painful. Like,
Yeah, no kidding. So, this is a bit of a crazy question, but was Malcolm X's racism justified? So this question's talking a bit about reverse racism, his view on whites. Was that?
I think in some ways, yes. Like, his chips were kind of set against him. Like he went into the world at a really hard time to like be a person of color and that sort of thing. But also on the other hand, I don't think that you can fight fire with fire, and I think that's
two
kind of what he
wrongs
learns.
don't make a right.
Two wrongs
That's
don't make
good.
a right, and I think that he learns that over time.
I think it's definitely something that you can put a very strong argument on either side, because like you can definitely like understand, like if you put yourselves in his shoes, like I'd be mad and like I would feel justified doing it, but if you look at it like morally, like you guys were talking about, like what it's solving or like what it's achieving.
It takes a really big person though to get over that anger and do something with
Yeah.
it, and make change.
Well, it was like that book, The Hate That Hate Produces.
Yeah.
I thought that like reading this book, I was like surprised. I didn't know that like that his view was like just separate, go back to Africa, or at least one point in his life. Whereas like I always imagine like Martin Luther King, like let's all like
Love each other.
love each other.
Yeah, and how he was
Like,
so
it's very interesting how like different that is, and like
Yeah, for sure.
is that okay, or like I mean I don't know. I was surprised by that. So definitely
Yeah,
don't know how to answer that question. Like
yeah, it's tricky.
both ways make sense.
I agree.
And if you look at it in practice, though, too, it definitely seems like Martin Luther King had a much more responsive, like,
Crowd.
a much more responsive crowd to his movement of
Yeah.
love, rather than
Yeah.
Malcolm X's movement of hate.
Hate and like separate.
A new question: is love more powerful than hate?
Ooh, that's tricky.
We need to answer that. We can move on.
Okay.
Well, that's it, because that was my assessment.
Oh, that was your stuff?
Yes, that was my assessment.
Oh,
Perfect.
just kidding. Goodbye, Mr.
We're done with
Strong.
you.
No, we're done.
No, we love
Just
you.
kidding.
We love you.
Heart.
We're
hold
done
it
with
up,
taking
hold
up
it
your
up.
time.
Everybody, hold up your heart. Where's Bud?
Go,
There it
go,
is.
bring
Please
that
give us
sign.
A's.
Heart.
A's.
Hey,
Thank you.
Bud.